Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is 2004's The Loathsome Ratmen and All Their Vile Kin for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay by Black Library Publishing. Okay, first a bit of history. Black Library Publishing was once a division of Black Isle Publishing, the people who did Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition, that had the purpose of writing and publishing so-called fluff books for the Warhammer universe. The Loathsome Ratmen and All Their Vile Kin is a 96-page softback that was designed as a reproduction of sorts of an actual tome in the Warhammer world. Indeed, the book is mentioned by name in Children of the Horned Rat. Right, to the inside. We are greeted with an introduction page that says, being an examination of the forms and nature of the race of Ratmen, known also as the Skaven, with emphasis given to the grave threat posed to humanity by their secret and unholy intrigues, with further well-considered thoughts, theories and conjectures, by the author Wilhelm Lieber. We notice that straight from the start it goes right into the character of the book, and also says it is printed by Altdorf Press, a good way of setting the mood from the off. The mood, however, then comes to a screeching halt when we turn the page to see the usual ISBN codes and the like. Maybe I'm being a bit pedantic here, but how difficult would it have been to publish these on the back of the cover or on a separate page preceding the main body of work? Next we have a table of contents that breaks the book down into 4 chapters. One dealing with the characteristics of the Skaven, one about their culture, one about what they produce, and one on their history. Following this, we have a fairly lengthy introduction by the author, explaining his encounter with the Ratmen, the reason for him writing this piece of literature. He tells a tale of the horrors he witnessed and stakes his reputation on the authenticity of his work, ending with a plea for the reader to not take this threat lightly. All very evocative. First up is Part 1, Unnatural History, the forms and characteristics of the Skaven race. This chapter delves into the supposed origins of the Skaven, and discusses whether they were rats that turned into men or men into rats. It discusses various theories by learned people, and even includes some medical drawings as evidence. It follows this with information on their appearance and the importance in their society of the colourings and markings, noting the difference between black, grey and brown Skaven, and offering a few suppositions, some right, some wrong. We then have a piece on the thing that drives all Skaven, hunger. It follows with some information on the kingdoms of the Ratmen, making the bold claim that they are indeed everywhere, living below us, and this is followed by the role of warpstone in Skaven society. It discusses the origin of warpstone and the kinds of things that Skaven use it for, like poisons, arms and armour, and of course, their foul technology. Part 2, a treacherous hierarchy towards an understanding as the Skaven worldview, follows this. This gives some information on the structure of Skaven society. It has some notes on the Skaven god, the Horned Rat, and it details how the Skaven have a very monotheistic worldview, as their foul god will share them with no other. It continues with some discussion on the Skaven leadership, the Council of 13, and then follows with information on the Grey Seers and how their influence and position steers the Skaven hordes, as well as giving them a unifying purpose and interpreting the Horned Rat's will. It also talks about their magical prowess, and has some recourse on the infamous Screaming Bell. It then goes on to discuss the 4 great clans, beginning with the wealthiest Clan Scryer. It talks about how Clan Scryer are the machine builders in Skaven society, and how their influence is felt in almost everything the Skaven do. It follows with the Beastmasters, Clan Moulder, and delves into their foul beast-shaping purpose. We then have the Plague Makers, Clan Pestilence. It discusses their religious purpose and the horrors of disease and plague that they inflict not only on the above world, but their own people. Lastly, it discusses the Deathbringers, Clan Eshin. It mentions the high regard to which the Council of 13 holds Eshin's assassins, and how they act as their secret police, ruthlessly enforcing their will whenever called upon. After this we have discussion on the lesser clans, and more pointedly the 2 rising stars, Clan Moors and Clan Scab. It mentions how these clans are led by warlords, and discusses their ambitious efforts to join the ranks of the great clans. Following this, it talks about the roles of slaves in Skaven society. This is followed by a disturbing tale called The Rat Son of the Butcher. Next up is Part 3, Damnable Works, the Hideous Fruits of Skaven Endeavour. This is a discussion on the way in which the Skaven make war, the strategies they use, and the importance of Clan Scryer. It discusses Poison Wing Globes, the Warp Fire Thrower, Warplock Jezzail, and the Rattling Gun, and makes the comparison to Dwarven Engineering. We also have a small mention in the footnote of the Doom Wheel and the Black Ark, which is interesting considering they are not mentioned at all in the actual Skaven sourcebook, Children of the Horned Rat. It continues with information on how Clan Moulder contributes to the war effort with the likes of rat ogres, mutated disease-bearing rats, and the supposed role of warpstone in all of this. This is followed by Clan Pestilence and their foul creations. It makes mention of plague bearers and even discusses some diseases, boil lurgy and flea buboes to be exact. Clan Eshin is next. It talks about how Eshin's assassins are feared by the other great clans, and mentions the various tools of their trade. The book talks about the murder of a Baron Dieter von Strumpflander as having all the hallmarks of an Eshin assassination. The next section is about how the Skaven infiltrate and influence the world above ground. It details how they tempt the wealthy with power, influence and their own warpstone-laced narcotics, and goes on to further offer comment on their motivations. Part 4, Hidden Infamies Towards a History of the Skaven Menace, is next. This section delves into the history and origins of the Skaven and even makes a reference to the doom that came to Kavzar, the Skaven's historical first showings to the above world, going as far as reciting the full tale. It then discusses the relationships dwarves have with the Skaven from the fall of their empire to the time of Sigmar. This section even points out that in Sigmar's Bible, the Deus Sigmar, there's a brief passage that goes, and then, calling his armies to him, Sigmar did go to the Middle Mountains. He did find himself confronted by a sinful horde, and taking his hammer he did cast the Ratmen. This proves the existence of the Skaven to the writer, as denying such would be denying Holy Scripture. Next up is the secret history of the Great Plague of 1111 IC that brought the Empire to its knees, and its supposed origins amongst the Skaven. It examines the evidence that it was indeed their creation, and the effects it had upon the old world. After this we have a section on a forgotten hero who fought the Skaven, Elector Count Mandred, who launched a crusade to drive the Skaven from the land, and has since become known affectionately as Emperor Mandred Ratcatcher. It then follows with the history of the Red Pox, and how the cities of Tilia stood up against the Skaven, and how to this day they consider them a threat and actively work to stop them, a refreshing change when compared to the Empire's fervent denial of their existence. It also includes a section on the author's visit to Miragliano, and his marvelling at how seriously the Skaven are taken. He also discusses some of the preventative measures that they take to combat their active incursions. After this we have a section on the City of the Damned, Mordheim. It talks about the fate of the city and its residents, and how the Skaven came and took the Warpstone meteorite for themselves. We then have a section on what the Skaven are currently suspected to be up to in the old world. Lastly, we have an afterword by the author requesting a call to action from all the civilised races of the old world to take the threat of the Ratmen seriously and engage them in war. And finally we have a bibliography of all of the sources that the author used. If you have seen any of my other reviews, you may note that I normally go into great detail about the product I'm reviewing. In this instance, however, I decided to give the briefest of discussion around what the reader should expect, because to approach it like I usually do would have been akin to spoiling a good novel. The Loathsome Ratmen and All Their Vile Kin is perhaps one of the best so-called fluff books I've ever read. It's been put together in a luxurious manner. The paper is thick throughout and it's beautifully illustrated on almost every page, the only downside being that it would have been a fabulous hardback. The main perspective of the book being written from the point of view of someone almost perceived as a conspiracy theorist is fantastic, the irony being that the author is absolutely right in their claims. I did find the footnotes littered throughout the book to be informative and relevant, however they were sometimes distracting and would occasionally derail my train of thought on the main text of the book. It does feel like a player version of Children of the Horned Rat, which, as they were produced within 3 years of one another, is hardly surprising. The previously mentioned artwork is particularly of note here. The book is littered with superb illustration after illustration of the Skaven, everything from double spread paintings to stripped back medical style drawings, with every piece of art attributed to an artist, source or collection in the old world. I found the discussion on the various clans to be really well written, although I do feel it gives a bit too much away to the players, but these are small gripes. The Loathsome Ratmen and All Their Vile Kin is a superb piece of work that will find a comfortable place in any Warhammer Fantasy Role Players collection. I give it a very deserving 9 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to check out my other reviews. Bud out.